You're listening to Graphic Novel Explorers Club podcast, an audio book club.
Thanks for checking out today's episode of Graphic Novel Explorers Club. I'm one of your hosts, Dennis, joined today by
Johnny the Sinner
and
Saint Francis.
You know, Dennis backwards is sinned. Today we're discussing Ripple, Predilection for Tina, written and drawn by Dave Cooper. We hope you've already read today's title because two of us have. So beware, spoilers ahead. We would love for you to share your opinion and thoughts with us. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at GN Explorers Club, or leave a comment on Facebook or email us at gnexplorersclub@gmail.com. Graphic Novel Explorers Club is available on iTunes, Stitcher, and wherever podcasts are available.
I bought this book at a gallery in Los Angeles that I've been wanting to go to for about 20 years called La Luz de Jesus, the Heart of Jesus. And while we were there perusing the gallery, which turned out it was a gallery maybe twice as big as the room we're in, and then a giant Evangeline-esque store. So I was like, oh man, what a rip-off.
Jesus is trying to guide you every day, Johnny.
What a rip-off.
So was Dave Cooper's work featured in this?
No, but they had some other, Camille Rose Garcia, who's an artist I've admired for a really long time. She actually got her Master's of Fine Arts at UC Davis, but I think she lives in Los Angeles. A Mark Ryden piece there, which he does a lot of stuff where there's like pink Hitlers and a lot of his characters look like Christina Ricci when she was younger. So there was actually quite a bit of art there. There was a shag piece. This is like all lowbrow outsider art. A lot of juxtaposed magazine artists are in there. So that was neat to see. It was something I never thought I would see any of these artist pieces in real life. Yeah. So that was cool. That was really cool.
So I have no idea who Dave Cooper is. Do you?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
So that explains why there's no rating on this.
What?
It wasn't sold in a comic book store.
Oh, well, I don't know.
Well, we'll get into that.
Well, I bought it at our gallery, but yes, this book would probably...
So this is art, Francis.
Yeah.
Art.
It's porn.
So, yeah, so this book, for the listener, if you haven't purchased it yet, or if you have and you haven't opened it yet, it is pretty graphic. It is a very graphic book, which caused some concern for you, Frankie, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Frankie's religious, Catholic.
Yes.
Fairly devout. And this book is the Antichrist, would you say? But no, and we're recording this during Lent, which is...
It's a holy time for Catholics.
Yeah.
That's not when you get lentils?
No.
Oh my God.
Can you check your belly button for Lent? No. Did you put the ash on your forehead?
The priest did.
A priest has to do it?
Well, or whoever he signs to do it.
Like one of his poor, unfortunate little boys?
No.
Oh, Jesus. No, the first time I ever saw Ash Wednesday on somebody, is that what you say? Is that the appropriate term?
Yeah.
An Ash Wednesday on someone?
Well,
was my buddy Flavio had come home. We had an apartment together. And I was all, dude, he's like, what? I'm all, how did you not see that shit on your forehead all fucking day? And he's like, what do you, no, dude, that's for Ash Wednesday. I was all, oh, I had no clue that's why it was called Ash Wednesday. Yeah, and then he enlightened me and I immediately forgot.
Yeah, so the ashes represent a reminder that you came from dirt and to dirt you'll return. Like you're nothing without God. And this is the idea of Lent. And I'm not that devout, so bear with me, but thank you for thinking so. It mimics Jesus's 40-day journey into the desert. And shout out to Best Lent Ever, which I follow, especially during Lent, by the Dynamic Catholic. They do a series every Lent kind of focusing on that. And
is this like an Instagram account or a website?
It's a website.
Okay.
But the purpose of Lent too is to help strengthen you against evil temptations. And what they talk about on Dynamic Catholic anyway, I think this is a really great way to explain it. Without self-control, you're a slave. It's slavery. So for example, if you don't have control against alcohol, you're a slave to alcohol. In Lent, you're supposed to kind of give up something for 40 days, and it just helps build your strength and to remind you.
Personal strength.
Yeah, and it helps kind of guide you during like evil temptations or like let's say, well, this is like some people give up like chocolate, some people give up other things, but like let's just say like alcohol is an issue. You might try to like refrain from drinking. Or one year I gave up gossip because I used to just gossip so much. Some people, I know my one friend, she's making a conscious effort to not use plastic.
Oh.
And so some people, like, you can choose to like just do better, do like your contribution to the world. So for everybody, it's kind of different.
Some people cop out too, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Using number 2 pencils.
And actually, I haven't participated every year in Lent. Like last year, I didn't even get my ashes. And
really?
Yeah. And there's a story behind that, but I don't need to bore people with it. But it really weighed on me. Like I really regretted not doing it. So I'll just keep going. Okay,
Yeah.
So what happened was these lovely gentlemen, after we record, we kind of get the next book and we kind of disperse to read it. And then we'll come back together to record, me and my co-host. And we had just recorded another episode and we decided to pick our books. So I got My Boyfriend is a Bear from Johnny, and Dennis got Ripple. So Johnny kind of warned me, and I asked. Johnny warned me. He was like, it's a little bit, graphic. And I said, is there any child pornography or anything like that, or any like abuse? I'm sorry, not child abuse in there. And he's like, no, there's none of that, but it's still kind of graphic. I was like, okay.
But a context, because we had read Preacher.
Yes.
There wasn't child pornography. It was just children being harmed. Also, was it Blue?
The Blue Book. It was all about a child.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And so after that, we'd already kind of established we weren't reading more of those books.
Anymore, yeah.
And not that was the focus of those books, but we got
tired of the trope of endangering children and
to move a plot line.
Yeah. So Ash Wednesday was a few days ago, and I got my ashes, and that's the same day that we exchanged books, Dennis and I. And Dennis he's like, it's a little bit graphic. I'm interested to hear your takes. I was like, okay. So Andy had actually drove me over. So as Andy's driving, I kind of flipped through it. As I'm flipping through it, there's very sexually explicit drawings. And I was like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. So then Andy has to stop and get gas. So we're at Costco. And I start looking through it again, just more like different pages, a lot more explicit. So I close it and then I Google it. And I read the description. I'm like, this actually kind of sounds like a good story. I won't give any spoilers away, but from what I read on Google, it's basically there's this guy, and I was wrong, but he's some sort of artist in some way. He hires a model to help him and to do his art of whatever. And she's not glamorous. She's very unglamorous and maybe like very heavy, just very...
She's not very attractive.
Yeah. Through this working relationship, though, somehow feelings are developed. And he finds himself drawn to her. And then, so I read the very last page of the book. Like I read it. I was like, oh, I get what happens. Like I get the whole gist. I don't need to read the book. I won't say now what it was. But so for the first time ever, and I am a diva, but I texted Dennis and Johnny that same night. I was like, hey guys, I'm sorry I flipped through the book. I don't think this is something I want to read. I could have worded it a little bit better. But
why? I mean, that's pretty succinct and to the point.
And then it really weighed on me because I've never said no to a book. And I know you guys have read books that I have picked that are not your
should
favorite.
Not have ever been read. Like.
Yeah.
But so this is what I've been thinking about for a few days. So Lent is definitely a part of it, but that's not the only reason. It's just not something that I personally want in my life, especially now. Like it is like even during Lent, maybe if it wasn't Lent, I could maybe kind of, but this is a time of almsgiving. It's a time of repentance. It's a time to like better myself. And I just don't want that in my radar. Yeah. And I just don't need to see it. And I just don't care to see it. And then, so then I was telling Johnny today when we were getting ready to record, I was like, it's borderline pornography. And Johnny's like, no, it's not porn. I was like, it's sexually acts of sex illustrated. So it might not be Playboy. It might not be pretty porn, but this is porn. And I said, I'm surprised this book didn't have some sort of warning or code. Like a kid could just go and buy this. And I'm not so prude, like, oh, kid doesn't know, but like these images were really, really graphic, what I saw. And it was like, and I'm going to say this, I did not read the book, but from what I could just get, this guy is claiming to somehow he loved this woman at some point. He has drawn her in such a gross way. I'm saying he didn't love her.
Like, that's up for debate in the book.
Oh, okay.
He thinks it's love, but it's obsession. And that's the difference is, he does start to see her as attractive, but it's not healthy. He's obsessed with her.
Okay.
and that's where in the book she outgrows him. We'll get to it. Not with you.
Yeah. So yeah, I haven't told John. I was like, I don't even want to know what the story is. And Lent just kind of happened to fall into it. I feel very strongly, but even without Lent, these are not books. They have no attraction or desire to me. But I will say, knowing that you got an art museum and what that is, I might have viewed it as slightly bit different. Like, I get it. I'm not trying to discredit artists.
See, the difference between pornography and art in my eyes is
intent.
Is the intent of it. Yes, this is graphic, but it's to show that for this guy, he's like finally experiencing a sexual relationship that he is like comfortable with. Like, for whatever reason, him and the character Tina both experience like, oh, we're into BDSM. Now, is that my thing? No, not at all. But for some people, that's their normal sexual life. That's what they want to experience. That's what they want. So I don't consider this porn because he's showing, yes, in detail what their sex life is like and what their relationship is like. It's the same thing of like, if you're showing nudity in a movie in a way that's like, this is natural for the characters, like they're showing breasts or a penis or a vagina or whatever because we're like in the room with the characters when they're expressing their love for the first time or whatever, something like that. That's not pornography. But if it's just to show someone's boobs or to show sex because it's to titillate and get someone off, then now, yes, that's pornography. So that's, I think, the difference for how I viewed the book was he's expressing what their relationship was like. Yes, it was very graphic, but for both of the characters, it was like their first like freedom to be their true selves with each other. So yeah, it's fucked up and messed up and weird, but that's the characters.
What was your take on it, Dennis, overall?
I thought he was a sad, pathetic character.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I got that impression too.
Honestly, I wasn't even sure what we were reading was reliable. Much like, and I was telling Johnny this before, I thought it was kind of like Lolita, where he was putting on, for me, certain things that didn't actually happen, or it was tainted by his filter. And so I think he was seeing things that he wanted to see that actually weren't happening.
Or there were reflections of himself in her.
As opposed to just her.
Yeah.
And so I don't think what we get in the book is an accurate reflection
No.
of what happened. But I mean, I didn't view it as pornographic. I think I'm on the same line with Johnny. I think there's a certain goal for pornography and a certain goal for erotic art, so to speak. God, that sounds so terrible to say. But it definitely was graphic, but I think it served the story of what he was trying to tell. But I can completely respect and understand why you wouldn't want to necessarily pollute your mind with that.
Hell no.
There's some things you just can't unsee. And
see, one of the things I do appreciate about this book is he is showing, maybe it's just the way he sees her or the way she actually was. He shows all of her flaws, his flaws and his physical flaws. He shows both of their physical flaws, but he still sees it as beautiful. He still sees her as beautiful.
That's the funny thing is he still sees it as beautiful, but I think that's almost a misogynistic kind of point of view, because it's like, no, she's just beautiful. His whole thing was, he wanted to find a homely girl, and he's like, this is perfect. It was almost like, I find you attractive in spite of the fact that you're this. And so I felt it was kind of
yeah, and I think maybe you're hitting on something too that I kind of got just from some of the images. There's just such a lack of respect towards her, right. And I was like, as a woman, like, I just don't want to support it.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the hilarious thing is he thought he was supporting her. So in his twisted mind, I think he actually felt that he was uplifting her and everything, but he really wasn't. He was kind of
she was a strong person without him.
She didn't need him. Yeah,
and then when she realized that, she left him.
Right.
I think this is a good enough cover of the book.
Yeah. We don't even have to go into any details.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. That's it. That's the episode.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really, it really is a short.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of that's the story. Is this guy hires this woman to be a model for? He wants specifically like a dominatrix latex style model. What Dennis said was he was specifically looking for a homely woman, and his words. And he went through a couple models. They weren't quite right, and she showed up, and there was just something different about her. And then they end up becoming sexually.
Well, she comes across as shy first.
Yeah.
And then slowly she opens up. And then honestly, she kind of changes personalities near the end, where it almost seems like she's manipulating him and being coarse with him. But once again, I felt much like Lolita, this was his view. He was seeing things twisted when in fact she might not have been like this temptress that she seemed to be. I think in fact he was just a crazy, misogynistic
control freak.
Yeah,
control freak, and
frankly, I lost respect for him for even wanting to have a relationship with his model. I mean, that's a violation. You're supposed to be doing an art project. Yeah. You're subject of the matter, whether you're doing a documentary, a drawing, or whatever. There's supposed to be a border because that's respect. Like you're saying, Francis, you're respecting the art and you're respecting the person as an artist. She's an artist as well, the model, so to speak. And by trying to initiate a relationship, that's just totally violating the art itself. You're not doing it for the art. You're doing it for selfish reasons.
Yeah, and I mean, there's times throughout the entire book she's just fucking with him, like the clown thing, and
but see, once again, I think that's him.
Yeah, but read the book if you.
So what happens at the end? Because like I saw like he wrote the comic book and like nobody's getting it, no one's understanding it, and he didn't understand it, and Tina didn't understand it.
Well, at the end of the book, it's kind of book ends where she left him, and he's just
3 years ago. I think.
Yeah, and he's just
upset,
slowly gone into a worse spiral into just being a loser.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautifully drawn.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
I like the drawings.
I love them. They're. It reminds me of like a 1930s, 1940s.
Yeah.
Rough style drawing.
For sure.
I loved it. I love the drawing. I don't know necessarily I love the book, but I love the illustration style that he did in it.
It's weird. I liked the book, but I didn't like the character. Like I felt he was way off base and he's crap. I thought it was an interesting story, but I think, he's manipulative. He totally
controlling.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't respect her at all. It was interesting because I liked it because it was interesting to see a character who felt wronged and was so obsessed with this woman, yet he can't actually see the real problem. It was just interesting to see someone who had this kind of problem that can't step outside and look at his real flaws.
He's self-reflection. Yeah.
He seems like he's self-reflecting, and he seems like he knows he's self-aware, but he's not. He's a pathetic human being.
And even his book, if this is like an attempt in some way or another to like a mea culpa, I'm sorry, it's still a shitty mea culpa.
Oh yeah. If this actually really happened, that's horrifying.
Yeah. This is a terrible way to be like, everything we had was really special to me. I'm really sorry. It's like, I don't know if that's what.
Yeah, because near the end, it almost seems like she's demonized and he's made to seem the victim. Whereas, once again, just like Lolita, Lolita is not the temptress. So I don't think Tina is at fault at all, and it's totally him, and he just can't, control himself.
Yeah. So like, I'm not his target audience, but what's unfortunate here is because of his art choices, I think a lot of people are going to miss out on a story that could have a lot of potential, or that more people would want to read. Like, because I did say, like, the story itself sounds interesting, the journey sounds interesting, but because it's so jarring, I think we've discussed that with other comic books, like with the Preacher series and stuff. Some scenes are just like, oh, you're just, it really.
See, that's where Preacher can go into being pornography, because it's just, it's gratuity for gratuitous.
Right.
Well, see, I guess my definition of pornography is slightly different, because when you're saying like, oh, someone showed their boobs on TV, or someone like, like they're implying there's a sexual relationship happening. That's nudity. This, what I flipped to, was actual like sex acts drawn out. Yeah. So that is, to me, when it reaches that level, like it's not, nothing is implied. Mm-hmm. They're straight up doing it. So, and in Preacher, most things were implied. There was no like, so that's, but yeah, you're right. Like it's so, so.
Well, yeah, I guess for me, it was almost like, you guys ever watch Leaving Las Vegas?
Yes.
Like, to me, that's a tough watch. I like the movie, but honestly, I've seen it maybe once or twice, but I actually like the movie a lot. But it's one of those, it's graphic, but it has to be graphic to show kind of
the damages of alcoholism.
Right, exactly. And so here I almost feel like the salaciousness is his spin on it, but you can, as a reader, can kind of see like, yeah, that's what he's seeing, but it's really his perverted mind that's creating these situations. And for me, it's a hard read, but a good one, much like Leaving Las Vegas, where it's like, I think the graphic nature and everything serves a purpose for the story. It's just, and you don't like the person. So it's not like one of those stories where you come at the end and you feel good about it. I mean, you really hate the person at the end.
It's almost the opposite of that last book we read.
Right.
My boyfriend is a bear.
Oh yeah.
Where there's growth. The person, grows as a human being and develops love and respect for a person, and there's nothing of that.
Ironically, though, I would say for both of them, even though one involves a relationship with a bear, both of them seem very honest to me. Like,
yeah,
the character in Ripple seems like a real artist. I see that incel MRA kind of type guy who is like, I'm just a nice guy. I'm trying to help this gal. She took advantage of me.
Did you ever watch the documentary R. Crumb about Robert Crumb?
Mm-mm.
And there's parallels to this in that movie where, not that Robert Crumb ever says he's like a nice guy or a decent human being, because he's drawn in very graphic, sometimes horrible things, but where he's just kind of like just too smart for himself and just kind of pervy and gross.
Right.
You're just like, oh, you're just a gross person who happens to be really artistically gifted.
Well, yeah, the level of grossness comes through, and that's obviously what repulsed you, Francis. But I feel that was needed.
It's intentional. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. If it was like a PG-13 book, it wouldn't have been as, I don't know, come across so hard. But well, Francis, you don't want to read it.
Yeah, I don't recommend it.
I would. I mean, if you can take kind of the hard subject and the hard graphics, I would recommend it as a one-time read. But
yeah, it's definitely a one-time read.
It's not like something like, oh, I read this every year. Yeah. I love it.
It's like me, how during the summer I always reread the Harry Potter books. Right. This is going to replace that. Yeah. My summer read is Ripple, a Predilection for Tina.
Right.
Well, Frankie, where can Catholic people follow you?
At the church, no. Words and Waffles on Instagram.
And I want to say something, Francis, for the listeners out there. We joke about you being Catholic, but you are a really open-minded person about many, many things. Mm-hmm. Like you are. I don't know. Maybe it's me putting the spin on you being a Catholic or whatever, but you really are really an open-minded, caring person, and I don't try to pit us against each other in that way.
Oh no, yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah. No, I mean, I know you guys
respect
joke,
your religion,
but I know you do. Yeah. And I will pray for you tonight, whether you like it or not.
You already know that's pointless and not. You're wasting prayers that should go to children in countries that have been fucked over by Catholicism.
I will say, because we're going down the wrong trope, but they bring that up every time in prayer too. Like the church is acknowledging what is going on. They know it's going to take a lot of years to fix it. They're like, what happened was horrible, and they're not condoning it, and they are trying to fix it. Well,
we're not going to go down there.
Yeah, but it is something that is addressed. It's not like Catholics aren't just turning a blind eye. Yeah. It's something that I've struggled with. A lot of others have struggled with. And I think that's fair. I think it's a fair thing.
A fair criticism.
Yeah. But the church, it is being acknowledged. So.
All right, man, we've gotten really dark on.
I know. Oh my God. Too sober.
You can find the podcast Twitter and Insta at Gene Explorers Club.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. We really appreciate it. Get your asses to church because Ripple
Oh, yeah.
Ripple's going to make you go to some church.
You can't unsee some of this stuff. Warning.
We're doing God's work for you. Hey everyone, Johnny here. We forgot to say when we recorded this episode that it's the final episode of season 3. We will be back in just a few weeks with our summer special. We're hoping we're going to do another grab bag. We really had fun doing that last season, and gonna have a couple other episodes too that we'll do, probably about 4 or 5. So thanks for listening. We really appreciate it, and we'll be back in just a few weeks.